What's up, Reef Builders? Salem here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my trip to Vibrant Corals and Fish, a wholesaler/importer of fish, invertebrates, and coral based in Irving, Texas. Vibrant gets shipments from all over the world, and luckily, when I arrived, I was able to see shipments from the Solomon Islands, Tonga, Indonesia, the Caribbean, and Australia, all at the same time. There was lots of extremely unique specimens, some of which I had not seen prior. And as well as that, they had a good diversity of bread and butter and high-end pieces. One of the first pieces we're going to talk about came from the Solomon Islands shipment, and it absolutely blew me away. I wanted to buy it immediately, but my wallet did not agree with me. I've been trying to hold back on coral purchases. I bought way too many, but this Scolymia vitensis, which I think has been reclassified as Lofilia vitensis, was one of the most unique I've ever seen. It had a lilac, almost a black base with green and teal highlights, but that lilac color, oh my God, extremely unique. Some of the Endophilia, or now Cynarina, can fluoresce a similar color to this. They come in occasionally from Indonesia, but I've still not seen that lilac color on really any other coral besides maybe some Recordias. So they had quite a selection of vitensis, which was quite cool to see because a lot of people don't bring them in. But due to the recent selection of corals coming in from the Solomon Islands, they've been coming in more and more, and they're just cooler and cooler phenotypes. Recently on their site, they had a pure rainbow one. Then, of course, in terms of Australian stuff, they get Western Australia and Eastern Australian shipments. So, of course, they have Australophila wilsoni, one of my favorite corals of all time. If you're not familiar with these, they actually come from Western Australia in kelp forest. So a lot of them come from colder water, but some do come from warmer waters. Vibrant claims they get the warmer watered ones, and they also condition them for a large extent of time. But there's great whites, there's saltwater crocodiles, you name it, around the areas where divers have to go down and collect these things. So it's quite impressive to see them. And of course, to have ones with cool coloration is always very rewarding. Certainly an underrated LPS that not a lot of people keep. Additionally, they had some of the Australian Holy Grail torches. So they're the typical Aussie gold, but they have a green mouth. You don't see these that often anymore. They also had some new Australian torches that looked just like the Indonesian Holy Grail. So the green and bright yellow, but they were Aussie. I was very surprised to see those. They had quite a good selection of Australian pieces. One of the ones they had the largest selection of was Scolymia, so Homophilia australis. So there were these two here, which were some of the nicest I have ever seen in person. The first one here with the predominant yellow, it probably has like 5 to 7 colors if you sit down and look. It was absolutely stunning in person. And keep in mind, this footage is from one of the first times I used the camera, so I wasn't quite good at filming coral yet. These were even better in person. The other one had its feeders open, so it had a feeding response. You can't really see the colors quite as well, but when it was closed, it rivaled the other one. These are kind of a grandmaster, like master of masters. But here you can see, I'm scrolling across this tank, this is their recent shipment of scolies. They had about every phenotype you could think of, some that were just normal blue that would run for about like $120 or so, up to Supermans, which you don't see that often, to Masters, to bleeding apples, reverse bleeding apples, war paints, some that were extremely unique that don't really even fall into a typical classification. And of course, they had those extremely high-grade masters that we just showed before. So very impressed by the Scolie selection. At least in my life, I have not seen so many Scolies in one place prior. So it was pretty impressive. They had lots of other Australian corals as well. I believe some Acropora, some of the trachees, and some bubble corals, I think, as well. So a really solid Australian shipment that had just came in. Jack was there helping me, and he was helping him unpack it. One of the cool species that was there is one that Jake dubbed Tonga Musa. So what these are is they're likely some type of Lofilia. You don't see them that often, but they're exported from Tonga as bower bankies. So they kind of look like a bower, but they've got a much more smooth kind of corallite, and as well as that, they have larger overall polyps that make up a colony. So you can see that usually they're kind of pale, they're pastel, but there was very good coloration ones here that were getting to become kind of neon, and there was multicolored ones as well. Usually they're kind of a drab, red or teal or orange, but yeah, there was some with some yellow, almost some purplish colors, and orange and red undertones. So like even some that were 5 colors or so. So it's pretty cool to see that they were getting in those. I mean, my overall impressions were that Vibrant tried to source everything. They had a coral for everyone, and they had lots of unique species. Here we're getting to the Caribbean shipment. So they had, of course, some Neglecta, which not a lot of people see those too often, but they're one of my favorite corals. They're corallomorphs, or mushrooms, as we call them, that come from the Caribbean. Usually they're kind of like a drab green, but they had lots of ultras, pinks, reds, magentas, yellows, even some that were almost rainbow-esque. These can get very large as well, so really fun to feed them, really good feeding response. They can take up a pretty decent size space down on the sand bed or lower flow, lower light area. Of course, also from the Caribbean, they had St. Thomas mushrooms. Some were even starting to form vesicles and bounce, your typical oranges, but they also had some kind of yellows and other higher end ones as well. The reds, and these are always good to see. They're hardy. They usually sell quite well. Like at least when I used to work in fish stores, they sold well. So cool to see them having Caribbean stuff. They also had rock flowers, which they sourced a location where they had not bleached. It's been very hard to get a hold of rock flowers that are healthy, but all of theirs looked quite good. And they had some ultras in there, some of the zebras, the yellow base ones, as well as some pinks. So all in all, the Caribbean shipment they had, the mix of rock flowers and various mushrooms, was solid as well. And they also might have had some Caribbean gorgonians in one of their soft coral tanks. So pretty much, like I said, they get it all. On top of this, they had a very nice selection of anemones. They had some huge carpet anemones, so not just your standard red carpet, but a red carpet that also had a green mouth. This one was super bright and healthy in person. I believe they also treat all of their anemones as they get them. I have to confirm that with Caleb and Danelle, but at least all of the ones that I saw looked really healthy. They also, I've been Vibrant before, and they often get the rainbow long tentacle anemones, the ones that are pink or orange or red, not just the kind of beige or teal or green ones. And then here is one of the coolest things that I saw. This was not for sale. They had a display tank dedicated to it. These are typically called octopus anemones. They burrow deep down on the substrate, and they are non-photosynthetic. So they come out at night. This tank had no lights on, and we had turned on the lights. Later on, it sucked back in, and like all the tentacles came in. I'm pretty sure they have a not very nice sting, and they fed it as well. I think some shrimp and took some silver sides. Super cool. So I mean, this is again a testament to the fact that they get everything that came in on one of their shipments. They said, well, we're keeping this. So it was cool to see one of those too. Very rare in the hobby. Of course, in terms of Indonesian stuff, they had no lack of torches. Lots of Holy Grail torches. Some were cooked up, they kept in their display tanks. Some had been brought in and conditioned for a couple weeks. And then there was also the fresh shipment as well. And all of these were very bright. They were high grade. If you're someone that cooks torches, if you get in torches fresh from the wild and they already have quite a bit of yellow that's beginning to show near that base, they often have really good genetics, and they'll be a good candidate to cook up. So they had quite a high end or solid selection of Holy Grail torches in terms of the genetics, their potential to cook them up. Good extension on them too. So it was cool to see high grade Holy Grails coming in. A lot of places that import Holy Grails, they'll either slap the Holy Grail name on something like a Hellfire torch or some of like the more master type torches, and it's not the, in quotations, OG Holy Grail, the ones that resemble the ASD or the original Holy Grail that was named. And of course, a lot of the other ones don't really have a lot of yellow at first, and they often never develop it. So that was also good to see. Also cool, they had multiple species of bubble corals. They had the short wall bubbles as well as the typical larger Indonesian bubble corals. So you usually only see the larger Indo variety of bubbles. This one here had a small pup on it, which was cool to see. One of the ways that they can reproduce is by budding like that and having small heads come off the side. But yeah, a lot of people aren't familiar with kind of short wall bubbles, the alternative species of bubble coral that kind of table out instead of forming predominant polyps or, in quotations, heads. So it was cool to see a diversity of bubble corals as well. They're one of my favorite corals, and they're not really appreciated in the hobby. And so it was nice to see those. And of course, in terms of Acropora, they had a purple monster variant from the Solomon Islands. They claim that this is from the original patch of purple monsters. I know that right now that Aquabiomics is going to be doing some genetic experiments to see if the Tyree lineage purple monster is identical to these ones coming out of the Solomons. It definitely was purple in person. I was filming these under more of a blue setting, so it didn't pop up too well. They also had a brilliant selection of Millipora and a mix of other types of Acropora species from, sourced from all over Indo, Aussie, and Solomon Islands. But yeah, some of these Solomon Islands Acropora in particular were jaw-dropping. Really good coloration on them. They had polyp extension already and looked very, very healthy. And of course, if they're already looking good out of the bag, they're likely to cook up and be even better. Something else they had a diversity of was different Lobophilia species. So some of these used to be classified as Symphilia. They're now Lobophilia properly, but there were some of these that were absolutely jaw-dropping. I mean, this one here had like green, orange, red. It was a very large piece, about a foot by a foot. So show-size colonies of high-grade coloration on Lobophilia. A lot of people don't really bring in Lobophilia because of the low demand, but they're one of those corals that I think is really underrated that a lot of older school reefers tend to appreciate, just because after you've been in it for a while, you kind of keep everything, and then you start gravitating towards those things that you've not kept that often. And one of the ones that I gravitated towards when I got bored with Euphilia, Fembrophilia, even some Acropora, was Lobophilia. Super underrated. There's lots of different species and tons of different shapes, textures, and color morphs. And they can be a very interesting species to put in a reef tank simply because not many people keep them, and they've got a great feeding response. They can be aggressive, but so can most any coral out there. So I've tried to incorporate more and more Lobophilia, Acanthastria, Pachycepta, stuff like that into my aquascapes, and I've really enjoyed having them. So it was good to see that Vibrant had a rich selection of Lobophilia species. Something else they had was these tiny little, what I want to call button trachees. So these were Trachophilia that were like less than an inch. They were kind of the size of like a button scolie, like nano trachees. So it was cool to see ones that were that size, and they had some pretty cooking ones that were multicolored that were that size. So not every single piece they had was this huge show-stopping monster, but they also carried smaller stuff as well, which would be great for people with nano setups or even stores that might be space limited. They could do an order of many of these smaller, it looked like kind of Queensland trackies is what they looked like, and they could save a lot of space that way. They're also typically cheaper or more affordable than larger ones as well. So all in all, Vibrant had a diverse selection of corals of different sizes, grades, rarity, to where there's something for everyone. Another thing that Vibrant had quite a bit of was invertebrates. They had no lack of cleanup crew. They had emerald crabs, peppermint shrimp, different anemone shrimp, anemone crabs, flame scallops, sponges, you name it. So that's also nice that they're able to get invertebrates. Some of the wholesalers only get in fish or only get in coral, and it's often only the large suppliers that have an offering of all of them. But it's nice that Vibrant is a one-stop shop that has corals from all over the planet, the high-end stuff to the bread and butter, the ultra rare that you'd never see to the common stuff that most everyone wants and is high demand, like Gonopora and torch corals, Trachophilia, acros, you name it. Or they have stuff like that octopus anemone. So they can get just about anything. And then on top of that, while you're placing an order, you can get an order for invertebrates and fish at the same time. So, you know, having years of experience working in local fish stores, it's convenient when you can get all of your shipment from one place. It just saves the headache of going and having to open up like 10 different website portals to really get what your customers are looking for or what you need to restock maintenance accounts. So it was nice to see they had dedicated invertebrate systems that were partitioned out by species, makes picking orders easy for them, and you can get everything fast and easy through one supplier. I was impressed by the diversity of species they had from all over the world. Seeing Tonga Musa, Vatensis morphs I had never seen, the octopus anemone, the dedicated fish and invertebrate systems. It was certainly one of the most holistic wholesale facilities or importers that I have toured and seen, and I was impressed. So hopefully you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new today. Be sure to comment the favorite coral or species that you saw below and tune in for the next episode. Thanks.